how does, play feel to your kids when they say more fun with us? What does that look like specifically to them?
Yeah, well, I think what I discovered specifically was um, often adults will sit and watch the kids play
Yeah.
at parks, at the beach, whatever the scenario might be, right? You see the parents sitting on a park bench or on a beach chair, and the kids are digging in the sand and getting messy and playing and laughing and striving to sometimes and struggling, right? And so for them, it was too much sitting on the bench or in the beach chair, not enough digging in the sand. Like we are really blessed. We have a place on the water on Lake Erie in Ontario, Canada, and so we park our boat just outside, in the water. And so they'll just go out to the boat and they'll just dive off the boat for an hour, right? And so if I was doing the classic not playing as much, I'd just be sitting on the boat, watching them, telling them to be careful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Playing more might be showing them how to be careful by diving in appropriately. You know what I mean? Being like, hey, if you do it this way, big splash. It's safer and we have a lot of fun together. So for them, it's really sort of that level of engagement and participation, and from that stems not only, I think, fun, right? But also learning and overcoming obstacles, which I think they want as much as laughing and being giddy.
Right. So how would you rate yourself now on a 1 to 10 scale? 10 knocking it out of the park on having fun with your kids.
I probably went from like a 4 to 7, maybe.
Cool.
So there's still room for improvement for sure.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Amanda, my wife, and I will play at different times in different ways with them. And so I think that it's really nice that they get it rounded out like that. Winter's here in Canada now, and she's a former competitive figure skater and figure skating coach. So she takes them out on the ice and they play. And I don't love skating as much, but I take them sledding. Yeah. And we build snow forts together. So we have our different modes of play as well. Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you struggle with play when it's not the stuff you love to do? Like, for example, you might love swimming. And so jumping off a boat feels really great. A lot of dads could resonate with that. But I remember, when my youngest, Ocean, who's now 5, I would put him back a year or two, and he would want to play these games where my wife and I we could not figure out the game. He would have he'd want to play with these little characters, and there were moments when we'd look at each other and just say, this is so difficult to be engaged and have fun because we don't understand the rules, and it's trying to understand his world. It's trying to be engaged. But have you experienced that also as a dad?
Yeah, completely. And when those are the particular moments right there, like for me, it's the in between that's the problem. But when it is really like a weird game, or I'm like, I would rather it be something I don't understand than something I don't like. You know what I mean? There's something I don't like, I'm like, something I don't understand, I can make up silly rules and be goofy too in that context, and that's like another example of some of the not underestimating your children thing, because sometimes that kind of creative free play is their superpower. Like we need more of it in our lives as adults.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, cool. How can I lean in? All right. How can I make this character do something really zany or fun or silly? And how can I bring an unexpected character into this game that even, like our 5-year-old now, Braden, wouldn't consider, right? Like, oh my God, really? There's a flying shark that just entered the game? What? Dad, this is amazing. You know what I mean? And not ruin their fun too much either, because sometimes you're right. They'll be like, no, that's not how this game works. Yeah. Like, I don't think there are any rules, but apparently there is one now. You just made it up against me.
Hey, because you have so much experience with nutrition, I naturally want to go there for a moment and say, have you been able to integrate these concepts of having more fun and doing it in the kitchen around food with health and nutrition? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, completely. That's an important part of our family life. So I'll start with movement and activity because I think that's an important driver, right? I think if kids aren't moving, then they're not as hungry, and then they can afford to be pickier in their own minds, you know? So for us, there's a ton of physical activity. Like we bought our kids Fitbits, not as a means to encourage more movement, but as a way to figure out how much they're actually getting. And, you know, our most active is our 7-year-old boy, and he averages 15,000 steps a day. And so he's just always on the go. But we have like a detached garage at our property, which we turned into a gym space. So there's a climbing rope in there and gymnastics rings. And we put up a chin-up bar for kids' height, you know, that they can reach. And there's gymnastics mats under them. And then we have all kinds of little kettlebells and dumbbells. So it's basically little versions of what we use to work out ourselves, Amanda and I. And they're in there every single night. And when it's nice out, we're running, you know, and we're playing. And not just like sometimes, it's like daily, you know. And so that I think is a really important driver. When it's nice, the garage door stays open. And even when Amanda and I are doing our workout, the kids will come and go as they please, you know. And it's not like they're following an exercise program like we would do as adults. They'll just pick some things up, you know, or they'll just knock out some push-ups, and then they'll go like pick dandelions for a few minutes and then come back in and do whatever, right? And so we're just modeling. And then I think once they're that active, they develop an appetite, you know, and that's when we provide them with the choices that are the healthier options. And so in our family, we kind of have a loose set of guidelines about breakfast, lunch, and dinner anyway. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we pretty much just serve protein, vegetables, and fruits. Now, if that feels like a low carb diet, anyone who has kids knows it's impossible to put kids on a low carb diet. Carbs are everywhere. You know what I mean? So we don't restrict carbs. We just don't feed them extra carbs. You know, I remember this dawned on me one time when the kids were a bit younger, and we pulled up to a family that we were friends with, like, you know, the minivan life. So you're it was like a grocery store parking lot or something. And we pull up, our friends are right next to us. Our sliding van door opens, their sliding van door opens, and parents are talking. And as we like go to drive away, all our kids are eating like goldfish crackers. I'm like, what did this transaction happen? You know, like, so carbs are everywhere, right? Sugars and all that kind of stuff. So we're like, we're not going to restrict any of that stuff. We're just going to feed them protein, veggies, and fruits at main meals, and then they'll get the carbs, however, through magical osmosis, you know, and then they'll have a balanced mixed diet. Yeah. You know, so that's kind of how we treat it. Now we have 4, and each of them has different, you know, I don't know, orientation to foods and pickiness or not. Our girls, for example, our 9 and our 3-year-old are very, very open to trying all kinds of things. I took a picture of our 3-year-old the other night. She had a plate of edamame salad, sushi, roasted chicken breast, tabbouleh. She had a cup of hot tea and an essential amino acid drink. That was her dinner, you know? And these are all her choices, right? And then our 7-year-old is the most active, but he's also the quote unquote pickiest or whatever. And so he has a more limited range of foods that he eats, but we've just found the ones that, like, for example, when it comes to veggies, he likes carrots and cucumbers. Cool. He pretty much gets those every meal. When it comes to fruits, he loves apples and bananas. Pretty much gets those every meal, you know, and then the protein sources vary. So, you know, for us, it was just about consistently putting the healthy options in front of them. And then, of course, as adults, it starts with you, right? Like, if you're like, you eat the healthy stuff, but we eat the fun stuff. Yeah. How could you ever teach them not to, you know, or to focus on the quote unquote healthier things? So that's part of it. And the other part that I think has been really important is we don't force like a limited eating window on them, which most people, it wouldn't think of it that way, but it's dinner time. Sit down and eat your dinner. Don't get up until you finish, right? What we've done is we've actually put in the kitchen along one of the walls a low counter, like it's a butcher block low counter that's kid size with kids chairs along it. And that's where we feed them. And if they walk away, it's fine. We just leave the food out until it gets finished, which it eventually will. It might take 3 hours, quote unquote, to finish dinner, and it's fine, right? So we just let eating be a grazing thing that day if it happens to be a grazing thing that day. And so there's very little pressure from us, rules, expectations. It's just like, here's your dinner. Oh, you don't want that? That's okay. We'll just leave it on the counter. And if you get hungry later, you can have it. And then they will get hungry later, you know?
And what's the philosophy behind that? I mean, I could guess, but I'd rather just ask you directly.
Yeah, for us, it's just sort of this lower pressure around eating. You know, our children, we got introduced to Montessori methods early, so our children have gone to Montessori their whole lives. And Montessori is a lot of things, but at the core of it is respecting sort of the agency, autonomy, and independence and preferences of children. And so we're like, if we're going to, you know, love that about their school, then we can't counteract that at home, right? If a child doesn't want to go to an activity that we have planned and we're going to be late because they're either resistant or throwing a tantrum, the opposite of agency, independence, autonomy, and respect is picking them up and shoving them in the car. Even though you're like, but we're late and you need to go. And once you're there, you're always happy. The opposite of respect and autonomy and agency is that, right? Same thing with food. Don't move until you eat your dinner. Well, it's stripping away their agency, autonomy, their ability to choose, their independence, their free thinking. These are all things that as adults, we desperately want them to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But when they're kids and they're under our charge, we're like, nah, I'll violate it now in the service of my own preferences. And that's a short-term win with a really long-term cost.